Let's take a look at the Procamera settings. So if I click on my app, go here, and there we go. Yeah, I'm in my office right now when you look at this. So here we have a setup that you can change just by going to the settings. So click on that on the lower right hand side, and you see you have some different settings you can choose from. So I have some things already set here. I want to make sure that I am in manual mode, but notice when you just touch the um, the ISO and shutter button, it then can toggle between different settings. So I can put it on shutter priority or ISO priority or back to manual. And also next to that I have a white balance setting, so I click on that and it will allow me to adjust white balance when I go in there. Now I like to have this up only because it will help you when you make exposures, and that is your histogram. And you can see the histogram is that graph that's kind of moving around because my camera is moving around and it's picking up different amounts of light. But this tells you the range of pixels from pure black to pure white, where pure black is on the left hand side and pure white is on the right hand side. So that's a very valuable tool for you to use as you're making exposures. You can then set the aspect ratio. 3:2 is a common, that would be a common 35 millimeter style setting. You can also do wide format, 16 by 9, 1:1, so you'd have like a square, like it would be a Hasselblad, okay, or a 3:1. Okay, but let's put it back on, let's see, keep it there, 4:3, 3:2. Okay. You can then go down to settings, and that will bring up some different selections you can make. I usually don't have Lightbox on. You can have a stabilization, you can self-timer on. Now this is also good to do. You can change the format here. You can put it in TIFF uncompressed, which I would recommend you doing, or you can put JPEG. Okay, so you have some different settings you can choose there. A TIFF, that's a compressed setting, uncompressed, which is a larger file, and then JPEG. Actually, it would be better to do JPEGs. It's better to use TIFF if you're going to do a lot of post-processing, but for us in this class, JPEG will be fine because this will go directly onto your portfolio without any other hassle. So let's pick JPEG for that, and I'll go back to settings in here and go back to my camera setup here. Let's see if there's any other things I need to talk about. I think that's pretty much on there. You can have auto shake on, your self timers there. So let's go back and just look at the basic layout. And by doing that, I'll just click on my screen, tap on my screen, and it brings up what I see here with the camera. And then let me go up here on the top, do this again, make sure that's on there. That's what I want, manual mode. Go back. Now you see you have your shutter speed is on the upper left there. Right now it's set for 1/20th of a second. That box that has a plus and minus is what's called exposure compensation, and your ISO value, in this case is 80, tells you the sensitivity of the sensor. The lower the number, the less sensitive the sensor is to light. The higher the number, the more sensitive. Okay. So if I click on, or just tap on, I just want to say click all the time. If I just tap on the shutter speed number, you can see that the shutter speed is down on the lower portion of the screen, and I can just slide that. So I can make it really bright, and slide it the other way, and make it really dark. And notice how my histogram is changing as I do that. And the histogram is also set up that you see when it goes red, it's telling you that you have pure white in there. And if I go back the other way, it's telling me I have pure black in there. And that's what you want to try to avoid at all possibilities. So you can just, by looking at the screen here, you can set your shutter speed. Okay. So maybe, a 30th of a second. That looks pretty good, you can see here. And then I just simply click the button below that, that large round button, and that makes the exposure. You can hear the click of the shutter going off and that kind of thing. That box that you see a circle and a square around it, up and down, this is your focus. So I can go and change my focus. And this is what we'll use later when we talk about exposure and that kind of thing. I mean, aperture and depth of field. So we'll get to that in a second, but you can see now my shutter is now 1/30th of a second. I can change my ISO value by just tapping on it. And again, you have a series of numbers that show up on the lower portion of the screen, and you can just turn this to higher values. Now you see, with the same shutter speed, I'm telling my sensor right now that it's much more sensitive to light, so that same shutter speed is making a lighter exposure or a darker exposure as I go down here. So typically in bright situations you want to try to have a lower ISO number, and in lower light situations you can bump up your ISO value so you can have you can get by with a slower shutter speed or a different shutter speed. And we'll talk about that in the future. Okay, so that's a basic rundown of the Camera Pro app so far. We're going to see other screencasts that talk about specific items that we're going to employ in this class.